2023 was an incredible year for Korean American authors, and I was lucky enough to check out so many, but even then, only managed to scratch the surface. This I would learn thanks to Alexander Chi, he of Queen of the Night and How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. He has an email newsletter called The Querent, where recently he listed a comprehensive list of 2023 Korean American authored books. And I've always thought of Chi as a Korean American author doula, nurturing talent into the world, obviously good for a bit of dust jacket copy, and a tireless champion of Korean American writers. And this list is comprehensive. Here, I'm only going to talk about literary fiction, a bit of YA. I'm going to sort of omit Korean works in translation, middle grade, picture books, nonfiction, and even then, I'm probably missing one or two here. Nonetheless, buckle up. Here it is, 2023's list of Korean American authored books you need to check out. I read The Apology by Jimin Ha, which features a 105-year-old Jung Ah, who is fabulously stylish, incredibly wealthy, and sharp-tongued. Just as we're being introduced to her, she is struck dead by a bus in Chicago. But even death can't stop her from her appointed mission that brought her from South Korea to the United States with her equally old and wealthy sisters. So flashback to the Korean War, a series of decisions that culminates in a present-day wedding she is determined to stop. But turns out being a ghost is hard, dealing with her sisters who are still infighting, gossipy, obsessed with appearances, and remarkably stubborn. So really, this is a book about how your Korean elders will never stop meddling in your affairs, even generations down the line. Forget Me Not by Alyssa Derrick. Stevie and Nora have a secret, sapphic, once-in-a-lifetime love and a plan to escape their ultra-conservative town and move to California as soon as they graduate. Except Stevie has a terrible fall, and suddenly she can't remember the last 2 years. She doesn't remember the plans to move to California, her wrestling with her own sexuality. She can't remember Nora, and so she's slowly drifting away from her friends, parents. She's wondering why she's even dating this boy that she apparently had a crush on, while Nora watches from the sidelines and wonders if the two will ever get back together again. Imposter Syndrome and Other Confessions of Alejandra Kim by Patricia Park. Alejandra Kim just doesn't belong anywhere. Her super Spanish name and her super Korean face means she doesn't quite fit in at her ultra-wealthy, ultra-white Manhattan high school. But in her neighborhood of Jackson Heights, she's just not quite Latinx enough. And things get even worse when her pappy's body is found on the subway tracks. This is from Patricia Park, whose 2015 novel Read Jane I really enjoyed, which is a very New York story inspired by Jane Eyre. The Do-Over by Suzanne Park. Lily Lee is a best-selling motivational business author, writing books like How to Be a Supernova at Work. She's working on her latest book, How to Land the Perfect Job, when an employee background check reveals that she is still, in fact, a few credits shy of getting her degree. And so 10 years later, she finds herself back at her alma mater to try and pick up those last remaining credits. There, in a computer science class, she finds that her TA is, in fact, her old college boyfriend. Sparks ensue. I like the tagline on the cover. It's time to finish what she started, which gives less of a romance vibe and more of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith assassins vibe. But I'm probably mistaken there. The All-American by Joe Milan Jr. Bucky is an Asian American high school student. As far as he's concerned, he's American, except he's only one of 3 Asian Americans at his high school, which means he has to put up with a ton of racist taunts, as well as some failing grades. But he's playing football with his eyes towards college ball, so he's got that going for him. Except some immigration paperwork gets screwed up, and suddenly he finds himself deported back to South Korea, where he has to contend with the South Korean military, North Korean spies, a submarine, and his biological father. Shenanigans ensue. Fortune by Ellen One Style. It is a mystery thriller involving a DNA lottery, a single drop of blood for the chance to win millions from a billionaire widow. Although some people suspect that this may have something to do with an incident that happened 18 years ago involving the unidentified remains of an infant. As soon as the blood lottery is announced, 3 local women are suspected of perhaps knowing a little bit more about the incident than they initially let on. I also read Sea Change by Gina Chung. Because I love me a messy Korean-American protagonist, and in Sea Change, Ro is just a hot mess. At 30, she's newly single, her boyfriend has left her to join a privately funded mission to colonize Mars, which strangely happens to be the second book I read in that vein, which also includes the fantastic Girlfriend on Mars from Canadian Deborah Willis. In Sea Change, Ro's best friend is moving on with her life, getting married. And Ro is still mourning the loss of her father who disappeared some 15 years ago while exploring the Bering Vortex, one of the world's most polluted areas of the ever-warming ocean in this sort of future world. But at least her dad brought back a giant mutant octopus, which ends up being the only thing that consoles Ro in this time. She's just flailing, going out to bars getting drunk, staying at home alone getting drunk, and just really kind of spiraling. But she keeps on keeping on, and frankly, I'm here for that. What We Kept to Ourselves by Nancy Joo-yeon Kim. Basically, it's a dual timeline story. We flip back to 1977, where Sunny arrives in Los Angeles from South Korea with their aloof, often absent husband. The United States is a lot different than what she expected. She finds she's very isolated and lonely. And then we jump ahead to 1999, and the Kim family is still trying to move on after the disappearance of their mother, Sunny, over a year ago, when the body of a stranger shows up in their backyard carrying a letter to Sunny. This is from the author of The Last Story of Mina Lee, which was a Reese Book Club pick. Huge win for the debut novel. Also, dual timeline featuring a dead mom, so I guess she's got a bit of a lane there. Your Love Is Not Good by Joanna Hedva. A queer, biracial, Korean-American artist is at an LA party when a beautiful model walks in. She suddenly becomes obsessed, determined to seduce her, make her her muse, which she does. These paintings of this white woman become a sensation, leading to sold-out shows and a ton of industry buzz. So she takes her muse off to Berlin to continue her work, but there is confronted with a petition started by a Black performance artist asking for artists to boycott the rich, white mainstream art scene. And she's torn between POC solidarity and knowing that success is just within her grasp. Sounds fascinating, but even more so is Joanna Hedva's absolutely unexpected to her, massively long hagiography around Nine Inch Nails and their guitarist, Robin Fink, and how Nine Inch Nails ruined a 13-year-old sleepover and resulted in parental supervision, among a ton of other things. Anyway, it's a crazy article. I'll have a link to that down below as well. The Liberators by E.J. Ko. So In-suk and Sung-ho get married and shortly after move to San Jose, California with an infant and Sung-ho's mother-in-law in tow. While in the United States, In-suk gets involved in what the Dust Jacket describes as an illicit relationship that reverberates across generations. Now, this is E.J. Ko's first novel, but she wrote a memoir back in 2020 called The Magical Language of Others that I really enjoyed. It talks about at the age of 15, living with her 19-year-old brother in California. Her parents left them both there as they went back to South Korea for a lucrative job. 2 years became 9 years, and there's the back and forth letter writing between EJ and her mom, as well as discovering poetry in this otherwise difficult time. Anyway, I love the memoir. Deep Roots by Sung Jae-woo. This is a second book in a series following a middle-aged Korean-American adoptee by the name of Siobhan O'Brien, who inherits a PI agency from her former boss. Siobhan, this time, with her lawyer boyfriend as tow, is going back to Minneapolis to spend Thanksgiving with her family. While she's there, she's agreed to look in on her sister-in-law's brother, who's having some mysterious late-night meetings with his co-workers, while investigating a case for an AI genius by the name of Philip On, who lives on his own private island with his wife, 2 ex-wives, and 5 children. Philip, however, is absolutely certain that his youngest child and only son is in fact an imposter. There's Flux by Jinwoo Chang, which I felt was like a collection of vibes. You've got this spot-on riff on Theranos, this miraculous new technology propelled by a singular cult of personality. You've got gritty, old-school TV heroes, and inescapable childhood grief mitigated by techno-magic milk, maybe? I don't know. I liken this to a first season of a really great TV show like Lost, where it's just all set up oblique clues and darker mysteries that point to something bigger, which, okay, I'm down for that. And I gotta say, this is one of my favorite covers of last year. Excavations by Hannah Mitchell, a former journalist, now stay-at-home mom, is at home in South Korea with her 2 toddlers, waiting for her husband to come home. He's never been this late before. It's not like him. She turns on the news and finds that a skyscraper that her husband is an engineer at has collapsed. When days pass and her husband still hasn't returned home, she leaves her 2 kids with her mother and goes out to do a bit of investigating, uncovers corruption, government cover-ups, and a swanky club in the seedy underbelly of Seoul. She has to decide, how much does she really know about the person that she loves, and how much can she trust those in power? The Hive and Honey by Paul Hume. This is a collection of short stories that examines themes of identity and belonging and the clash of cultures across countries and centuries. I like Paul's stuff, and I've read a couple of his other books as well, including Snow Hunters, which is about Johan, who escapes to Brazil after the Korean War to apprentice underneath a Japanese tailor. Short story, barely over 100 pages, and it is about as quiet as it sounds, as well as Run Me to Earth, which is centered in Laos, which saw over 2 million tons of ordnance dropped on it over a 9-year span. The book follows 3 orphans across the years and around the globe. This thing is melancholy in the best possible way, and I especially enjoyed that one. I also managed to check out Skullwater by Heinz Insu Fenkel. I thought of it as a Korean Stand By Me. It features a biracial Korean-German kid who's coming of age in a Korean army base in the 1970s. Insu spent some time in the United States and is returning to Korea to hang out with his friends at this army base. But that time in the United States provides this familiar Western framework that renders this story nostalgic and familiar, even though he's dealing with black markets and hidden clubs, transsexual shaman, practicing geomancy, and visiting funeral mounds for Chuseok. I really did enjoy this particular read as well. Waiting for Mr. Kim by Carol Rose Spalding. This is a set of interconnected short stories that follow the songs, a Korean-American family across 4 generations starting in 1924, just prior to the Immigration Act, and extending over the years to the end of the century. This won the 2022 Flannery O'Connor Award for Short Fiction, and despite that, has a single review on Goodreads, so that needs to be addressed. The Sense of Wonder by Matthew Salesses. This is Won Lee, an Asian-American NBA star that stuns the world after a 7-game winning streak and gets nicknamed The Wonder, naturally. Covering all of this is Robert Sung, a sports writer. As well, you have Carrie Kang, which is Lee's girlfriend, who is a big studio producer trying to make K-dramas happen in North America. Anyway, all of this sounds way more approachable than the first book I read from Salesses, which was Disappear, Doppelganger, Disappear, where the protagonist is slowly disappearing, being replaced by this doppelganger that looks exactly like him, but does everything infinitely better than he does. Except eventually the doppelganger disappears, leaving the protagonist to pick up the pieces. Really sort of surreal. So maybe this one will be a little more approachable. 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Mireille Lee. These stories are set in the demilitarized zone that separates North and South Korea. We're introduced to this female character otherwise known as the Trickster. And across these 8 interlinked stories, the Trickster, who is a shapeshifter, assumes many different roles, like that of a slave or an escape artist, a terrorist, a spy, a lover, a mother. And this has been called a genre-bending debut of love and survival. I also read Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. Angie's got a bit of a lane here, sort of a literary legal thriller that centers a special needs child. This is the follow-up to her fantastic debut, Miracle Creek. Here we have Alan Parsons, husband, father, out for a run in the woods with his son, Eugene. Except Eugene is the only one that comes back. The thing is, Eugene has been diagnosed with autism as well as Mosaic Angelman syndrome, which means he's completely nonverbal. So the only person in the world that might have an answer as to what happened to Alan Parsons simply can't say. And it's up to the family to try and figure out what did transpire. So narrating the story is Alan's daughter, Mia. She's a frenetically minded 20-something that just keeps veering off into tangents and footnotes. and pulling at different threads, trying to figure out what exactly happened. Did her father die, or did he leave the family? And which would be worse? Was it a suicide, or maybe something more ominous? And what is this research he left behind about a happiness quotient, and how does it fit into the larger picture? Hurt You by Marie Myung-Ok Lee. This is a YA reimagining of Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. We have a young Korean-American teen that's just trying to protect her older neurodivergent brother. The family moves out from San Francisco to the suburbs to access better care for him and find a community of other Korean Americans. But she quickly finds that at this particular school, being white and rich is what rules. The story apparently was inspired by the author's own son, who is on the autism spectrum. Y/N by Esther Yi. So we have this bored copywriter living in Berlin, there's Germany again, when her life is turned completely upside down when she discovers Moon, a member of a massively popular K-pop boy band. When Moon suddenly retires, disappears from the public eye, she has no choice but to leave Berlin, fly to Seoul to try and figure out what exactly happened to him. This has been called a surreal debut from novelist Esther Yi. Throwback by Maureen Gu. This is Back to the Future meets Joy Luck Club, when a Korean-American teen is thrown back into the 90s to help her teen mom win Homecoming Queen. This is Gen Z reckoning with millennial parents and finding eventually some common ground. Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling. Camp Zero is an American climate change survivor settlement located in northern Canada. Rose has been asked to infiltrate this camp working as a sex worker to find more information about its architect. While there, she meets Grant, who is there trying to escape his family's dark legacy, and the two of them working together discover that perhaps there is something a little bit more sinister going on there. Meanwhile, there's stories of an elite troop of women soldiers stationed nearby at an abandoned climate research facility. So how those two stories intersect, I'm not exactly sure. And there's Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park. This thing is wild, featuring assassins, mad poets, slasher films, K-pop bands, and the perils of social media. And frankly, I'm a little lost. I'm only a third of the way through this thing, and I just keep getting tripped up by how Park blends fact and fiction and wavers back and forth between the two. Case in point, the Korean Provisional Government, headed up by Syngman Rhee, did in fact exist, but then Park goes on to explain that there are anticipatory members and secret members that don't know they're members, and what if it still existed today? And I just get twisted up. So frankly, I need to start this book again from the beginning and just sort of let go of any preconceived notions and approach it in a different way, but it seems worth the effort. Upcountry by Chi Sun Lee. Claire and Sebastian, a middle-class Manhattanite couple that decide to leave to live in the Catskills when they find a house in foreclosure. The house in question belongs to April. It's been in her family for generations, but she's got 3 kids from 2 different dads, and she's a single mom. She needs the money. So she sells the house, renovations begin. While that's happening, Sebastian falls for Anna, the only Korean American that's part of a nearby religious cult called the Eternals. Anna also happens to be pregnant. Meanwhile, April's ex is out of prison and now suddenly wants to be part of his son's life. So this is a story about faith and class and community from this debut novelist. Okay, that was a lot, and that's just books. I mean, 2023 was also a pretty incredible year for Koreans in TV and movies. You've got Steven Yeun for Netflix's Beef, as well as awards for Greta Lee and Celine Song for The Incredible Past Lives. So, holy crap, really, really great year. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. That was a lot this week, so I'm going to leave it there. Wish you a great week of reading, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.